I'm excited to have Ravi Thakkar, my very good friend, in the studio this morning. Ravi has an inspirational story. Originally from India, his parents came to America to go to college, and his dad got his master's degree. But then his parents moved to Canada. That's where Ravi was born and raised. Spent over a decade working in corporate America in the oil and gas industry. And 2011, that same industry brought Ravi to Houston. And almost for a decade, he's been transitioned and has his own custom construction company called Thakkar and Company. I'm excited to share his journey, his inspirational story with all of you today. Ravi, excited to have you over here.
Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you were born and raised in Canada, and unlike most Indian kids, you had a passion for playing ice hockey.
Yeah, passion I did, but I wasn't very good at it, but I loved playing it. So grew up playing hockey in Calgary. And at the time that I played, there wasn't too many of us Indians that were playing. So enjoyed it for just shy of 18 years. So played for a
18
while.
years.
Yeah.
And then you went to University of Calgary, got your degree in engineering, and then you got your first break in oil and gas industry. Walk through that journey, Ravi.
Yeah. So, coming out of high school, looking at what I was going to do in university, didn't really have a clear direction. My dad has his master's in engineering. So it was kind of, the right kind of fit at that time, and loved it while I was doing it. And during the summers, I was actually able to intern at the company that my mom worked for in their engineering group. So that was...
So is your mom also an engineer?
No. So my mom actually worked as a administrative assistant, secretary for the regulatory board that looked after oil and gas in Alberta. So worked for them during the summers, gained a great deal of experience, and then ultimately coming out of school, that set me up. So I was able to kind of work for some of the mid-size operators, and then ultimately joined BP, and then ultimately ended off with Shell before I kind of retired and kind of went a different direction. So,
love it.
Yeah.
So what kind of influence did your dad play in influencing you to follow his path of being an engineer? Was it a major role, or was it your own passion?
Yeah, no, honestly, it was incredible. Both my parents had, a great deal of work ethic. My dad did his master's in engineering in Boston, moved up to Toronto, ultimately transitioned to Calgary. And both him and my mom, they struggled. I mean, they did a phenomenal job, making kind of ends meet for my sisters and I, and made phenomenal careers for themselves. And ultimately, I think that's what set my sisters and I up. Engineering, my dad was a great engineer. He was brilliant in his craft, and ultimately he was able to kind of coach me up and kind of set me up as well.
Love it. And 2011, Houston happened for you.
Yep.
This was with one of the oil and gas companies, and you were in the industry for over a decade. You had a very specialized job. You would go to these rigs and work offshore for a few days, on and offshore, and very stressful job as well, looking after completion of oil wells. Talk me through your experience working in oil and gas. Yeah,
so, my early on in my career when I was up in Calgary, working land projects, so, everyone's heard of hydraulic fracturing. That's kind of the buzzword in the industry. That's kind of what we did. So anytime the drilling engineers would drill a well, completion engineers would follow in. We do what would need to be done to bring that well on production. So started off my career in land up in Alberta, did some work in various provinces up in Canada. When BP moved us down, that was right after Deepwater Horizon, so after the oil spill. Ultimately started off in a really heavy process role for BP in the Gulf of Mexico. So they had implemented a ton of process, making sure that event would never happen again. So we were kind of working projects from that perspective. Ultimately transitioned from that into going offshore, doing a lot of offshore stints, like you said, and working on these wells that were would take 6, 7, 8 months to bring on production. So spent a lot of time offshore, and then ultimately, right before I had left the industry, I was working kind of more in a operating OpEx type role, where bringing these old wells back to life.
So I can say, I can call you close friend today.
Yes.
But back in the day when you were in corporate America, our companies were not aligned in a way.
Yeah.
You mentioned, Deepwater Horizon, the Macondo oil spill. we were on the drilling side.
Yeah.
I used to work for Transocean. That's the rig actually that went down. And a client customer was BP.
Yeah.
And there was all this lawsuit and stuff that went back and forth, who was at fault. But I do remember, even at that time, I would go to these rigs and do operational safety audits. I would be gone for a few days, up to a week or 10 days. And being on the rig, even for a day, is so stressful. Work goes on 24/7, and one mistake can lead to a big event, big issue on the rig. And it was exciting as well, getting on a helicopter, landing. The first time I was like, wow, I'm going on an oil rig. But after the 10th, 12th one, it is
exhausting.
high stress.
Yeah.
So you did that for over a decade. And then you transition. And I had a similar story working in corporate America. I transitioned as well. I want to share mine and I want to hear your story.
Yep.
The day I made the decision of leaving corporate America and getting to real estate, I had my wife's blessing or approval within a matter of minutes. I mentioned to her I want to quit. She said, sure, that's what you want to do?
Yep.
Do it. But the next day when I spoke to my mom and dad, they were like, Beta, are you sure? You came to America, went to grad school, you have all these professional certifications, you have a graduate degree, all the specialized knowledge. You really want to be a realtor. Because back at home in India, a profession is not looked up upon,
Yep.
it's looked down upon.
Absolutely.
Realtors, for lack of a better word, are called scumbags, douchebags in India. They're not trusted.
Yeah.
And the process is not regulated. So for me, I'd made up my mind that I was going to quit. And of course, I had to, get by my wife and get her blessing and a support. For my parents, even if it's through a strong objection, I would have still quit. But that was my first reaction I got from my parents. Are you sure you want to do this? How was it for you? Because Rachna, I know
Yep.
through all these years, she's very supportive.
Yep.
She believes in you. And I'm assuming she was your backbone when you made the transition. How was it like sharing with your parents that, Daddy, Mommy, I'm done?
So, I've actually told very few people this story. So this is a perfect segue into this. So when I, like you said, from a family perspective, Rachna, extremely supportive. She was actually, the anchor that allowed me to do what I wanted to do. She continued working. She had, the health insurance, all the stuff that we need to allow someone to quit their day job and kind of run with it. With my parents, so we started our firm February 1st of 2017. I ultimately left the oil and gas industry in May of 2018. But I didn't actually tell my parents about that I was leaving. They always had known, we had started our firm, but I didn't actually tell them that I had left Shell until probably halfway through 2019. And so,
wow.
Yeah, and so this actually may be the first time that they're hearing it if they watch this podcast. But ultimately, the reason being is because I think for the exact reasons that you said, ultimately, my dad and my mom both were extremely proud when they found out that I was working for BP and ultimately working for Shell. In their eyes, that was a lifelong profession. You don't leave those companies. They set you up. They have the pension. They have the retirement. They have all the benefits. And so ultimately, when I told my parents that I had left,
That was 6 months after
that was
you left?
almost a year later.
A year later.
Yeah. So when I had actually told them that I had left, ultimately, I came clean and kind of had told them that I had left, but I don't think they actually know that it was May of 2018. But ultimately, the reason why it took me so long to tell them was because I didn't want to put any undue stress on them. They didn't need to kind of go through this, sleepless nights, wondering if Ravi would be okay. So by the time I told them, I was confident and I knew that, there was no turning back and there was no reason to turn back.
Talk me through it.
Yeah.
This is on the phone or in person?
Yeah. So ultimately it was in person. My parents live up in Calgary still. They spend their winters down here. So it gets obviously very cold up in Calgary.
So you sat them down?
So, yeah, I mean, I can't exactly remember how I did, but I do remember just ripping off the Band-Aid at that point because, at some point they would come down and they probably were wondering, why isn't Ravi going to Shell, first thing in the morning and, coming home at night. So it was a very, by the time, like I said, by the time I told them, it was more of an event in my own mind than it was
Right.
for them because they kind of, I think, put the writing on the wall. But yeah.
What was their reaction?
I think at that time, I think they still questioned why I would have left a super major, a company like Shell or a company like BP. Why did I ultimately leave? now I think they understand kind of the reasons why. I think my dad's entire family in India is very, very business oriented. So they all, own companies up in India that are very extremely successful. So I think my dad understood ultimately, but I think they both still wonder why I left. Why I left Shell. So
family in India, are they in construction, in real estate? What businesses? Is this different field or
completely different? So they started a cooking oils company. So they have a factory that manufactures cooking oils. They can in Gujarat, and they sell it in Gujarat, and I think they actually sell it across India. So it's been quite some time since I've gone to India, but they are very extremely successful, and they're now in their third generation, I believe, of that company.
Wow.
So yeah.
So multi-generational business in India of different products and services, but first one your family to get into real estate.
Yes.
And this is one field I truly believe, Ravi, that long-term financial success comes from owning real estate or being in the business. Because when we are helping clients make a decision of buying, selling, or doing transaction, we are the first ones to know about opportunities. The market that you service, you're the first ones to know where there's a lot in Montrose and Bel Air and Heights area, which has a good potential to rehab the home or build a new home. But being in the business also comes with a lot of risks.
Yep.
And a few years back, especially during COVID, we had a whole market shift happen. And last 24 months, we had interest rates hike. So these variables are still there. And thinking from the Indian mindset, it's high risk.
Yep.
Whereas when you have a 9-to-5 job with all the benefits, and especially with a oil and gas company, you're set for life.
Yep.
What was your biggest roadblock or challenge that you had to face internally when you were making decision of putting a 2-week notice and getting into being a custom builder in the Houston market?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed a lot of the concerns, right? So, like in real estate, obviously, there's a big requirement for capital. There's a big requirement for all these different things, and quitting your W-2 income that you're getting every 2 weeks. Obviously, that's going to put a strain on your abilities to go get loans and do what you need to succeed in this industry. So, roadblocks-wise, I think I created all these roadblocks in my mind, right? So, I think the biggest challenge that we have in our industry or as entrepreneurs in general is that the biggest roadblocks are actually internal. Like you create them in your own mind and you make them much, much larger than they actually are. What I quickly realized is I had a support network that was able to put a lot of those roadblocks or actually make those roadblocks no longer roadblocks. And I'm just giving you an example. You mentioned the cost of capital, right? Interest rates, what's going to happen? If I'm leaving my day job, can I get loans? I had, several people, my brother-in-laws, my close friends that I used to work with at Shell, my close friends actually from the Sugar Land area that I actually got to know over the last 10, 15 years since I moved down here. Staying with friends in Houston, they actually supported what I was doing as investors. So they came to the table understanding what I wanted to do, and they were actually able to overcome a lot of those roadblocks that I had kind of created in my own mind. The second thing that I think was my biggest challenge was ultimately the unknowns, right? So when you're leaving your corporate America job and jumping in with 2 feet, you just don't know. And being a little naive and just saying, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm just going to jump in and figure it out along the way, I think helped me kind of navigate the waters of becoming an entrepreneur.
So with over a decade in corporate America, what aspects of your work in that industry is helping you today to be successful in the real estate industry?
So where our firm is situated is we're obviously involved in the design and build aspects of construction. So everything from luxury single-family homes to commercial developments. We have offices now in Dallas and we have offices here in Houston. And I would say the single biggest, it was actually the thing I hated the most when I worked in oil and gas, but it's actually the thing that's helped me the most now is the process side of things. I still struggle with process. I think people in general struggle with process because it feels very much like a paper pushing exercise. But I will say that in our industry, in my kind of little niche of where we work, process is everything. So all that work that I did back post Macondo that I hated, that I would come home and kind of complain about to Rachna and to the family, I will say is something that is actually benefiting us now, that drive for process. We're not there yet, but we're ultimately chipping away and making sure that we're kind of building processes to help us scale.
So systemizing, having policies, procedure, process for everything is critical.
Yeah.
And you're correct. No matter where you work, whether it's oil and gas or accounting, no matter what work you do,
Yeah.
when you're required to fill up the checklist
Yeah.
and do all the paperwork, it's a chore.
It's
and you say,
terrible.
let me just make a sale, do my job. But that's true, Ravi, where most people, when they jump into being an entrepreneur, and you can become an entrepreneur, start your own business, even when you are high school graduate or high school dropout.
Yep.
I truly believe what we learn working, especially in corporate America, the work ethic, the professionalism, the communication skills we develop, that's hard to accomplish when you jump straight into being an entrepreneur. And, similar to you, I had 10 plus years in corporate America. And what I learned over there, those aspects has made who I am today. In consulting, I used to work with Deloitte. You could be a consultant or senior, and you would do an audit, and you expect to present your findings to C-suite people. Tell them where they are making mistakes in the processes or organizational departments, what corrective actions needed, and what the potential impact is of that mistake. Absolutely. So you had to have the data, but you can't be a storyteller. You have to be factually correct, but you have to give the right information, help them make the decision of putting the corrective actions in place. Otherwise, as an auditor, if I have findings and they're not relevant or not important, then my audit is of no use.
Yeah.
Those skills of communicating effectively and be concise and finding root cause of problem was a huge blessing, which I apply every day. On the flip side, and as an auditor, Ravi, what I'd be looking for, no matter what I was reviewing or evaluating, I would always be looking for problems or areas of improvement. So if I'm reviewing a process or an organization, if there are 50 things being done correctly, but 2 of them have room for improvement, I would laser focus on those 2 and find the issues. And the people involved in the process would say, Kunal, why don't you look at these 50 things that are doing well? Why you focus on these 2? As an auditor, yes, you're doing 50 things right. I've got to focus on the room for improvement. And in a way, that has become my core when I'm talking to my team. And I could be in a meeting for 15 minutes. They could have all of these flowers painted, what they're doing well. I said, put it to the side. Tell me about this. I said, how do you find the exact thing to ask that I've not done? But I truly believe, what we learn, whether it's oil and gas or corporate America or Big Four, the work experience, the professionalism, the work ethic that we get there, that's the biggest missing piece when people become entrepreneurs. They think, I'll wake up when I wake up, I'll do what I've got to do. And they have the cycle. They work hard, make tons of money, and then they become lazy being an entrepreneur. So the discipline played a really important role in my life being successful today. And you shared that when you were in that job, processes were a pain, but they're a blessing today.
Absolutely.
What about people management, Ravi? Because when you were working for a company organization, you could be a department head or manager, and people report to you. But ultimately, when you have people reporting to you, you're expected to be holding them accountable, directing them, delegating work. But if there is an issue with non-performance, essentially each company has an HR department. They get involved, they do the dirty work, bring the box to the office, have them pack and leave. But as a business owner, that's one thing that you don't anticipate. When you are somebody who's providing for families and you provide employment to people and you have certain metrics of performance evaluation and someone's not performing, we have to make tough decisions and let people go. How's the experience being in that?
Yeah, I will say that is the single biggest challenge that I have personally, just because that, it's something that there's no coaching, there's nothing that can prepare you for that conversation, right? That sitting down with someone and suggesting to them that their performance doesn't meet your standards, right? Because your standards may be unrealistic to begin with, so you have to kind of look at it from that lens as well. But I will say the people management side of things has been something that I will say I wasn't good at when I started. I continue to not to be good at, but I do continue to kind of coach myself and try and learn. Thankfully, our firm has benefited from some incredible people landing in our firm, and they continue to be with us, and I'm super blessed to have them on our team. And I think they know who they are, right? So like you could walk through our office, and anyone that's ever worked with us can pinpoint exactly who I'm talking about. They go that extra mile for our clients. They go that extra mile for our firm. They live and breathe our brand and our firm's colors outside of the office. I mean, it's very, very obvious that they do that. And those are the types of people that you actually want to surround yourself with, right? So are they doing the right thing when you're not looking? Are they doing, are they helping you build this brand? Because at the end of the day, I think we would all be naive to believe that when you step into this role as your own boss, that you're going to have all the answers. You don't, right? You don't know the answers until you actually learn and kind of grow. So I will say the people management side has been difficult. I will say that I'm trying to get better in that space. But our firm's actually been really blessed to have a number of good people that, like I said, started with us several years ago and continue to be with us today.
So being the leader, being the founder, being the owner of the company,
yeah.
You're also responsible for having the right culture within your company, within your team members and employees. What are you doing on a daily basis to instill the right values or right culture within the company and make them feel like it's theirs, not working for Ravi Thakkar?
Yeah, I will say the biggest thing that you could, in my eyes, that you could do for someone else is empower them. So, I think that's a buzzword that we've heard before, and really who knows what that means. But ultimately, when you hire people and they want to do the right thing, just giving them the run room to go do it. If they make a mistake, they make a mistake. It is what it is. You can correct the mistake. But trying to micromanage and trying to get them to do exactly what you want the way you see it done is probably not, in my eyes, is not the right way to do it, because all these people are brilliant folks. They come with a lot of great ideas, and just empowering them to kind of run with their ideas and let's see if it works. I think where you can protect yourself is this process side of things, right? So making sure that their ideas align with the processes that you've set out for the firm. And that's something that we're trying to do. So build the inspections, build the quality QA, QC behind the scenes such that they can go implement their ideas, keeping in mind that, here's our end goal and our objectives is to do the right thing.
So for your company, Ravi, do you mind sharing with me, do you have any set of core values or vision of the company that you want to share?
So it's funny that you say that. I think that's kind of always like in business school and when you have conversations with other entrepreneurs, one of the first things that they ask you is, what's your mission statement? What's your core values? And I feel terrible saying that we have yet to define a set of core values or a mission statement that lasts longer than a given 2 years. Because I think where we started in 2017, when we started, we were doing one spec house, maybe 2 spec houses a year. And we grew from there. And then ultimately, when COVID happened, we had to pivot. We became a very custom heavy, where we didn't do very many spec homes, and we were working with clients and designing their homes and building their dream homes, as well as commercial developments. And then over the last couple of years, we've actually balanced that a little bit. So now we're doing 1 or 2 spec homes. We're doing 8 to 12 custom homes, and then we're doing about 4 or 5 commercial projects a year. And we've kind of balanced our books, making sure that we're kind of in the 3 spaces that we want. So ultimately, defining our core values and our mission statement continues to evolve. I know that's not what they teach you in Business 101, but it's the truth. And it's kind of, we're continuously evolving as we grow.
I appreciate your candidness, and to be truthful, even we do not have set of core values or a mission statement, but we have a certain belief system that when we are working with a client, we put their financial interests ahead of ours. When we are advising something, we put ourselves in their shoes and determine, would we have made the same decision knowing the information that we have today?
Yep.
We also believe that partnership or working with the clients is all about long-term success, not short-term success. Clients come to us and ask us, hey, should I sell my home or lease my home? And in our business, when you sell someone's home, the commission earnings are significantly more than what we earn when we lease someone's home. But multiple times, if the market conditions dictate that they should hold on to the asset for a few years and then sell it, that's the advice we give them. So just like yourself, you don't have written out mission statement, core values, but you have some belief system that we'll do it right by everything. And one thing I learned from my dad, who's non-entrepreneurial, but he's a retired physician, he's by the book, and everything done systematically, done correctly, is early on when I was young, to be honest and to be ethical. And his philosophy was, if you owe someone $1, make sure you return the money back to them,
Absolutely.
even before they ask for it.
Yep.
If you cheat and take someone's money you don't deserve to get, even if it's a penny or a dollar,
Yep.
someone's watching up there, and you will lose tenfold of that.
Yep.
That's why for us, running a business ethically and being honest about how we run our books is really important. So while I understand,
Yep.
you may not have a mission statement, all those,
Yep.
but I want to hear about Ravi's vision
Yep.
as it may have evolved over the years.
Yep. Yep.
First coming to America to work in oil and gas, then quitting your job. Each milestone leads to us redefining our goals.
Absolutely.
Right? However, vision is overarching. We could have set a goal for 2024, 2025, or 2022, years to come.
Yep.
But vision is overarching. Do you have a Ravi Thakkar vision or
Yeah.
your vision for your company? Do you mind sharing that with me?
Yeah. So, the way we've kind of defined ourselves and kind of what we deem as kind of our long-term vision is we strive to create something that we can pass down to our kids. So our son, they have, whether he knows it or not at this age, and maybe he doesn't want to join our firm when he graduates university, but the vision for us is to create something generational that he can ultimately take over. And I think this kind of feeds back into what you had just mentioned about kind of maybe the core values and the mission statement. Is in order to do that, we don't let our finances direct our decision making. And the reason why that's so important is because if we go that extra mile for a client and we do things right and we follow our processes and we make sure that they get the best quality product and they're happy in their home, they're going to recommend us to several folks that they know. And so our team understands that we're not going to make decisions based on cost. We're not going to make decisions based on schedule per se, but we're going to definitely make decisions based on quality. Because not only is it the right thing to do for clients, but ultimately even long-term liability. If our long-term vision is to create something generational, something that we can grow, across the state of Texas and maybe even outside of Texas, something that our son can take over one day, the only way we're going to get there is if we do the right thing for our clients from a quality perspective, and we ensure that our long-term liability is as low as humanly possible. So I think that feeds directly into kind of what you just mentioned. Because anytime in our industry, specific to construction, where you let costs dictate a decision, in my opinion, it's 100% guaranteed for failure, because you're ultimately looking to save money, and saving money in our industry is not really the right decision. It's making sure that the processes are there to ensure you're not having to make that decision to begin with. So
Love it.
Yeah.
So you shared, and Dave right now is what, 14 years? 13 years old?
13 years old.
And while it's unclear what he would do, and I have two young boys,
Yeah.
it's unknown what they would do in the future, whether they would want to be in this industrial business or not. It's unknown. But I have intentional conversation with my boys
Yeah.
almost every other day, talking about what I do, talking about what my wife does, why it's different being an employee versus an employer versus being an entrepreneur, and the struggles of being in corporate America, what success means. Where do you feel Dave, and he's 13 years old, he's a teenager now,
Yeah.
no matter what path he picks in the future, whether he wants to be a doctor, whether he wants to be an engineer, or he wants to take over your business, what do you think is critical for him to learn today as a teenager, which are foundational things that teenagers should be aware of or learning no matter what path they pick in the future, Ravi?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the thing that's helped me the most, and, kind of like you started off, you and I have been friends for over a decade now. And when I look at entrepreneurs like yourself, or even other successful entrepreneurs that we both know, I think adaptability is probably something that I feel has benefited me the most. And what I mean by adaptability is that no matter what industry you work in, like you said, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, business, whatever it may be, roadblocks are guaranteed to come. This is not, it's not for the faint at heart. So ultimately, and not only are roadblocks going to come, but challenges and issues and the need to pivot based on industry conditions, so on and so forth, are gonna follow you. So I think being able to quickly adapt and pivot or make decisions in those situations is key. So one of the things that right now at Dave's age that I've tried to work on, but mind you, it's been a struggle, is that work ethic aspect of it. Taking him to sites, making sure that he cleans the sites, doing things that aren't considered desirable. He hates it, and I would too if I was in his shoes. But I think that work ethic and understanding that, hey, if you want a couple of dollars to go buy the next video game or whatever, you're going to have to go clean 10 job sites and spend a Saturday afternoon doing it. I think that work ethic will help him in the long term. But then also understanding that, the benefits that come with owning your own business, that flexibility and whatnot comes with a lot of challenges and stresses. And so learning how to adapt and learning how to kind of pivot when needed is important in my eyes.
I love it, Ravi. So, he sees all the success, the lifestyle that you and Rachna are putting together for him and his future, but it's the hard work, struggles behind the scene where you've shared with me that you could have a project ongoing and at midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, you may get a call. There's an incident or issue at a work site where you have to be there to resolve the problem. Those are things kids don't see. But instilling the right values, especially at this age, is critical. And that's what I talk about in the book, the first generation mindset, where as we go down in generations, they take things for granted. One could be just being born in America. That's a blessing. You were born in Canada. It's a blessing. But your dad, when he came to America first time, when he went to Boston, from Gujarat to Boston, came here to go to grad school, his life must have been a struggle. It
was different.
It's language barrier, cultural barriers, and then coming here to study. And I know your mom joined him after about 6-8 months. All those sacrifices that he made back in the 70s got you to the point of success today, where you were blessed to be born in North America, and then have you to go to one of the best colleges, get a degree, and now you are living in Houston, Texas. But those things, I'm sure your dad or your mom were doing certain value installation in you growing up that made you committed towards getting an education, going to college, being sincere about your work. And I loved what you shared, that if your son needs a reward system, buy a PlayStation, buy a video game, he's got to work. It's not, it's my daddy, he's got a business, I'm going to sit around and do a whole lot of nothing. I loved what you shared, because they got to understand it takes hard work, commitment, and work ethic. Most people, especially when they take their parents' or grandparents' business over, they sit around. They don't want to work hard. And it's where there's a saying where you go from short sleep to long sleep, back to short sleep when you were, working in the trenches, working hard. You build a business, and then your next generation reaps the awards and does nothing. And the following generation is back to digging the trenches.
That's right.
So I love what you shared, where work ethic is important. What does he feel about, he goes to a great private school. And I also believe that for you and Rachna, it was important to relocate. You lived in Sugar Land, but you moved to a different part of Houston so that your son could go to one of the best schools in the Houston market. And he's being tutored, trained, and coached by the school system over there. So education was important to your dad, to you, and same thing for your son. What about sporting activities for Dave? What is he involved in? What do you do with him, Ravi?
So right now his schedule is full. So he plays soccer. So his, the activity of choice is soccer. He's in that, 6-7 days a week. I'm trying to selfishly get him into golf just because that's what I enjoy, but that's been somewhat of a struggle. But so ultimately right now is soccer. So he plays part of his school team and then part of a club team.
Love it. Talk about your journey with Thakkar and Company, where initially you were focused on building residential, and you would buy lots through investor strategy, buy and build, townhomes and single-family homes. Now you're doing a lot of commercial developments in the Houston market. Talk about the journey as a construction company, residential, commercial. What's your long-term vision with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons why, our bread and butter since we started, and it continues to be our single-family luxury homes. So we specialize in clients that are looking to build their dream homes, anything from $1.5 million plus. That's kind of where we fit into the industry. Over the last couple of years, though, we've been doing a lot more commercial, and that was selfishly driven. And the reason being is, I think, because both of those require a similar skill set. So I think from a competency perspective, I think our team has that skill set. But it also gives us the ability to navigate if the industry, if one side of the industry goes up and the other goes down. So single family residential, you can imagine, is very susceptible to interest rates. So is commercial. But on the commercial side of things, there's a lot of, business owners that need their brick and mortar stores or their larger scale developments. I also think it feeds into kind of the larger vision, which a few years ago we started working for the city of Sugar Land on smaller scale projects. It was a one-off project here and there, but we're ultimately looking to also kind of get into that space as well. And I think that's feeds into kind of the larger vision, which is to create something generational, something that withstands kind of all these ups and downs and these obstacles. Is that if we can kind of be that three-headed monster of government, commercial, and single family, no matter what the industry throws at us, we could pick up projects in one of those three and help kind of weather the storm if they do come. So
it's almost a decade being in construction.
Yeah.
Well, most people, they start off with buying a beat-up home that
Yeah.
needs CLC,
yeah,
rehab the home and flip the home. That's how most people start.
yeah, yeah,
And a lot of them get stuck in that mode
Yeah.
where buying and flipping, where there are great margins, but it's not scalable
Yeah.
because you're depending upon finding a good deal and finding trades and finding resources to do construction. So what I love what you're sharing is it's the growth strategy.
Yeah.
You don't have a complacent mindset. You had a lot of success first few years doing residential. Now it's commercial. Then it's government contracts. What gets you fired up, Ravi, every day? What's your secret sauce?
Well, and it's funny, and I think you and I have actually had similar conversations in the past that it can be lonely at times when you're trying to kind of motivate yourself, right? So when I was working for Shell, I had a 100,000 people organization behind me that's meant to motivate its folks, and they kind of motivate you and push you along. When it's you working for yourself, you have to come up with ways to motivate yourself. And so one thing that really drives me, that I've noticed that I love the most amongst all the things that we do, the things that I love the most is the sales and working to achieve kind of that sale. And so as I kind of look at kind of how we're going to grow, for me, working in Dallas, Austin, and Houston, that's kind of the obvious. They're very, very close. They have a lot of similarities in how people work and the people and the mindsets and so on and so forth. So for us, it's very easy to kind of, okay, let's expand to these three regions. And then what motivates me and kind of what keeps us going is that drive for sales. So looking at year-over-year growth. So one of the things that we do internally is we look at our numbers. We're constantly looking at our numbers, and it's how can we grow without with the competencies that we have. So the skill sets that we have, the processes that we currently have. And so just based on that, the regions that we continue to work in, it's very obvious that, okay, we have this skill set, we have these processes internally, we can easily move into these areas and not really have to start from scratch again. The remodeling side, it's funny that you mentioned that. We've never actually lived in that space. We tried one and we were horrible at it. I mean, mind you, the job went great, but it's just a different beast that some folks are incredible at. And it's a great, great business model. Unfortunately for us, we were just never able to kind of make it in there. So it's just, we don't have the trades and we don't have the skill sets to be working on a remodel. So.
And nothing right or wrong with that.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people have the passion of working with people's emotions,
Yeah.
the choices for the backsplash, the choices for the countertop, which is great. But to grow your company and scale it up, you got to put emotions aside, build a product line that appeals to most clients.
Yeah.
But when you're building a custom home in the $1.5 million range, when there is time spent with the right outcome, they want to spend $10,000 on a countertop, so be it.
Yeah.
But when it's flip and flop with these remodels, it's all about keeping the cost low,
As low as possible.
finding a good opportunity, and then flipping it over.
Yep.
Ravi, you also have a philosophy in life where it's good to make a jump and take the risk, but it's good to have a safety net.
Yeah.
And for you and even for me, our safety net has always been the education that we had and the work experience that we had. Nobody can take that away. So if I had failed or I was not successful being where I'm at today, or if you did not succeed being an entrepreneur, you could have always gone back to the Shells and Chevrons and oil and gas companies. But having a safety net is important. To me, a safety net is my education and work experience. What's your definition of safety net?
Yeah. So I come from two very risk-adverse parents. So both my mom and my dad were phenomenal in the industries that they worked in, but they were very risk-adverse. And I think that trait has been instilled in both my sisters and myself. So when I left oil and gas, the transition was long. So, ultimately started actually in 2012 when I first moved down, investing in real estate down here. I was still working, but it was as a passive investor, working with builders, working with developers around town and investing in their product. By 2016, started kind of dreaming up this vision of what we wanted to create. 2017 started the company. May of 2018 is ultimately when I left. So if you kind of treat it as that 6-year span, that in itself was somewhat of a safety net, making sure that, second guessing myself over and over and over again. The second thing that, I think worked in our favor was that I had Rachna. Rachna was extremely supportive. So she was able to continue working. She would, if God forbid something were to happen to, where we weren't successful, yes, I could go back, but let's say if it took time, at least she was earning and she had the benefits. So we kind of transitioned and piecemealed it and made sure that before, ultimately we cut the cord where we both had left our day jobs, that we knew that we were on strong footing. One of the funny stories that I still remember and I, think about quite often is that when I left Shell, one of the safety nets that they actually threw at me is when I went to quit my job, they had actually given me the opportunity to say, why don't you go back to school, and that way you have the time and the ability to just really think this through. And I still remember having a conversation with yourself and some of my other mentors and friends at the time, and ultimately chose not to do that. Mm-hmm. But that was actually a strong possibility as well, where not only was I thinking about, okay, if we weren't going to be successful, what are our safety nets? But I was also thinking about, the possibility about going back to school. And I would actually recommend that process to anyone. Looking back, I don't think I would change anything. I don't have the ability to jump into something without that safety net. Some people do, and I think it's incredible. I think it's really, really cool to watch and see. For me, the way that transition happened, it took forever, and it probably impeded growth early on, which I'm totally fine with. So for me, it allowed me to sleep at night. It allowed me to kind of at least think clearly and navigate the way I wanted to do it. But there are some folks that could jump in with 2 feet and don't even turn back, and they would have grown faster than I. But I'm not. For me, I'm extremely happy with the way things went.
So in our culture, Ravi, it's very common for parents or in-laws to live with you, right, or live with us.
Yep.
And your parents were in Canada. You moved to Houston, so you had some long distance. Relationship with your parents. While you were transitioning, it was almost like a secret. They did not know that Ravi had actually quit till over a year. But most of us don't have that privilege. Either your parents are back at home and you can do what you want to do. But had your parents been in Houston, they lived with you, and you were evaluating quitting, and them being risk averse, would have played a major role. Do you think the outcome may have been different?
So the one thing that I am forever grateful for with my parents, they are very supportive. So although I think that the outcome would have been the same, I think the transition might have been a little bit slower because I would have felt the responsibility of other folks in the home. But I do think that I still would have done what ultimately happened, just because I think from the day I graduated engineering school, although I loved going through engineering school and I loved working in the oil and gas industry, I do think my mindset wouldn't have changed. I still wanted I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to create something on my own.
To leave a legacy.
Exactly, yeah. Create something generational, something legacy-driven. So I think that the outcome would have been the same. The time period, the safety net might have been would have been a little bit longer. But I think my parents would have actually supported it. Although it's probably easier for them to say that now. At the time, they probably wouldn't have. But my dad, being an engineer, even now when he comes down from Canada to visit for the winters, he loves driving the job sites. He loves kind of asking questions. He loves being involved in the nuts and bolts. So I think that opportunity would have kept him entertained early in retirement. So
love it.
Yeah.
There's someone sitting on the fence today.
Yeah.
They have a cushy job, 9 to 5, and they're not content.
Yep.
They want to make the jump. They want to do their own thing, whatever it may be. What would you say to them today, Ravi?
Yeah, honestly, I look back at kind of the way I did it, and I've recommended that to other folks, and I still stand by that. I think if you're looking to do something in life that's, something different than what you're currently doing, I would say get started. I mean, no matter what age you are. I mean, I was in my mid-30s, I think, at that time. Some people that I know are now in their mid-40s, late 40s, early 50s, and getting started into kind of becoming entrepreneurs and doing their own thing. So I don't think time-wise, I think there's no better time than now to start. I'm a huge advocate of safety nets. I would say make sure that transition, that you feel safe, because I do feel like you are going to be tasked to make a lot of difficult decisions, and having that safety net will allow you to think clearly and make the right decision for you and your family.
Ravi, every time I talk to you, meet with you, engage with you, I learn something new, and you are inspirational, where you had a phenomenal opportunity to grow within the oil and gas industry. There for over a decade with an engineering degree. You could have been going to places, but you made the tough decision of quitting, starting your own company to leave something of impact for Dave, potentially to take on one day or to learn something. I also love when you shared that even today when it's weekend time and my boys are on the iPad 24/7, to take a teenager away from their playing activity, to take them to a work site and have them pick up the trash, pick up and clean the work site for $1 or $2. That's phenomenal work ethic you're instilling in your son. That's hard to do, especially for a teenager.
Absolutely.
Ravi, it's always a pleasure. Would love to have you take one of my books that I wrote about a year back, which talks about what we discussed today, but instilling the right values in your kids so that they take nothing for granted. It's all about having the first generation mindset.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me on here. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.